Hi friends, this is Richard Ruling, here to share with you both on YouTube and on Hebrew Nation Radio. The YouTube will be focused for SDAs. I'm coming from an SDA background, but I'm seeing that last week I did a segment on Ellen White as the prophet, and she saw her church in apostasy, and she defined it differently in her last book, Prophets and Kings. She said what God purposed to do for the world through Israel, the chosen nation, he will finally accomplish through his church on earth today. And then she defined it, he has let out his vineyard to other husbandmen that will render him fruit in their season, even his covenant-keeping people. Well, that's something that the SDAs don't know anything about hardly. The covenant is not talked about except occasionally. But we know the Jewish nation made a covenant to be God's kingdom. And God later said, return to me, I'm married to you. He regarded that covenant as a marriage relationship. And that's, the bridegroom comes in the wedding parables. Are we going to get it? Will we understand it? Seventh-day Adventists don't. And in the message to the last church, Laodicea, lukewarm with materialism, the true witness tells the agelos, messenger, badly translated as angel, but angels are not blind and naked. Revelation 3:18 says, you're wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. It's really not about angels, it's about the church pastors. They are messengers. Angels are messengers, but when it comes to the messenger in that location, it's talking about the messenger to the church, the pastors, okay, not the angels that are blind. Okay, so Adventism, I believe, has serious problems missing the basis for a marriage or wedding. And we're going to get to it. They really came together in an act of judgment on Egypt. And America is like Egypt. Half a dozen parallels with Israel came into Egypt in a time of famine, okay, and pioneers came to America in a time of famine for the bread of life, the Bible, because the papacy had prohibited the Bible and said, tortured and killed people, burned them at the stake for possessing a Bible. Well, they can't do that here now, but they have worked very effectively to alter things and infiltrate churches, and I appreciate Alberto Rivera, a former Jesuit priest who told the truth and actually is no longer with us because they killed him. His wife said they poisoned him, but he exposed how that Jesuits, young women, would go for counseling to pastors and with sympathy get their sympathy aroused and their affection and have an affair, and then later say, don't speak against the church, speaking of the Catholic Church, or you will be exposed. So this is war, really, with truth. And what I have today is in that direction, maybe, because last week I did something on Ellen White, and I gave her high marks for her being 100 years ahead of her time on health, and some people could just shrug it off and say, well, that's, the fact is that Dr. Clive McKay of Cornell University was amazed that she did not borrow the fads and fallacies of her day. She didn't use them. If she was borrowing for all that she said, she was an inspired borrower, okay? But the point is that I have something today to share with you. I'm going to put my glasses on to read it, a quote from Ellen White, and this is huge. She said 125 years ago, 1897, listen to this, the whole heathen world will rise up in judgment against those whom heaven has favored the most, but who have placed themselves on Satan's side and worked in his lines to bring their soul-destroying narcotics to foreign lands, to pollute and to destroy heathen nations with their defiling and health-destroying drugs. For the sake of revenue, a professedly Christian nation have forced their traffic upon the heathen nations at the point of the sword, and thus compelled them to accept their merchandise. This is in 3 manuscript releases, page 341.3, third paragraph. Well, I found it online. Yes, she did say that 125 years ago. And this is not something you can make up. It's too big, too complicated, but it fits too well today with the mandates. And sadly, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has taken sides favoring mandates instead of religious liberty of conscience, which they say they stand for. But $20 billion is what they're getting annually from their health care baloney. Medical care is what they're getting it from in hospitals around this country from the federal government. They love that money. Rich and increased with goods, they think they need nothing. Well, Christ is outside knocking. The truth is knocking. And I have to go back to Matthew 7:7 because it's not as simple as that. It's ask and you'll receive, seek and you'll find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. For years, I have been asking rather, and got nothing. Try to dialogue with church elders, leaders, and it's a short conversation, sadly. It says in Isaiah 42:19, who is blind as my messenger, who is deaf as my messenger? Well, that's church leadership today, I'm afraid. Basically, I have sent emails, many emails, and I've had my share of mistakes in the past, but for several years now, I've been seeing it, I think, quite straight, and I was straight on this COVID situation 2 years ago in March, just looking at the Bible, because all the references to physicians with an S are negative in context. The physicians embalm people in Genesis 50 verse 2. Well, that tells you the physicians of Egypt were losing so many cases, they also did the embalming. The physicians are linked to lying in Job 13 verse 4. And God said that King Asa sought not the Lord, he sought the physicians. Well, what does that tell you? There's a difference between those two. And in the New Testament, a woman with an issue of blood spent all her money on physicians and was no better, in the Luke, the 8th chapter. So, sad situation for physicians, and that's where I'm coming from. Okay, I got a medical education, thought it was great, and it's a high privilege, but looking back, it's like Moses in Egypt, learning all the warfare and things that Egypt had to offer, but God had other lessons for him to learn. Herding sheep for 40 years, learning patience, meekness, and things like that. We have some more important things than the wisdom of Egypt. And so I sadly wish that pioneers had not hijacked the school that Ellen White sent $5,000 for. She wanted a school for natural remedies to train laymen to do medical missionary work. And it could have been great, could have been wonderful, because in her time, she had helped pay for John Harvey Kellogg, who went and got a medical education and was medical director of the Battle Creek Sanitarium. And in 1918, with the swine flu epidemic, they got, which reminds me, I'm going to have this thing bumped off of YouTube probably fast, because I'm mentioning the truth here. And don't you love YouTube for prohibiting truth? I don't know. But let me just say, tell your friends quick to take a look before it gets gone. And if you go, I'll put a link below here where you can find it on Hebrew Nation, just the audio. Okay. So anyway, Ellen White wanted a school to teach natural remedies, but the AMA said you can be accredited with your health school if you teach pharmacology. Just add it in. Well, she said no. we're not supposed to be tied to the educational policies to the world by so much as a thread. Well, they had an itch that couldn't be solved. Kind of like Israel of old. They wanted a king. They wanted to be like other nations. We wanted to be like the approval of other nations with accreditation, with AMA accreditation, etc. Well, bad idea. And bottom line today, drugs are a leading cause of death. You can't find that online from CDC because they're liars. They have never mentioned medical care or adverse reactions to drugs in their top 10 list for the past 22 years, 24 years, really, since 1988. When JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, said that 106,000 deaths in hospitals made medical care the fourth to sixth leading cause of death in hospitals. 2 years later, outside the hospitals, an outpatient study, Western Journal of Medicine, said 199,000 had died. And you put them together, 199 and 106 makes 305. Medical care is number 3 cause of death. And one more medical journal, Archives of Internal Medicine, in 2007, September 10, reported a 7-year study from 1998 to 2005 when death rates increased 2.7-fold. That's 2.7 times 305,000 is 824. Medical care is number 1 cause of death. Every doctor ought to get out of being doctors and making money. We should have taken naturopathy. That's a strong statement. I board certified internal medicine. I can tell you it's dangerous. And my former wife died from a prescription to Cipro, a antibiotic for a bladder infection that she took from her doctor. I was retired, couldn't prescribe. I would not have prescribed Cipro. But bottom line, drugs are a leading cause of death, and the church is up to its ears in making money from with the Adventist. They call it healthcare system. It's medical care. It's not healthcare. And so, sadly, we're on the wrong side of this issue with the COVID as well. And I just say, please tell your friends, look at this in a hurry before it's gone, and go to Hebrew Nation Radio or some other place where I'll try to put the link. And you can get on my email list, or if you send me an email if you want more information, and I'll be sure to send it to you. My email is ruhling, RUHLING 7@juno.com. Well, love your hearts. I need to see where I'm at time-wise. I'm just looking at this screen, and I'm about half done with this 25-minute segment for Hebrew Nation Radio, and got to make this about the same length. So let me tell you, we're coming to a time of judgment, and we got a faulty understanding of it from pioneers who thought 1844 was the time of judgment. They gave that message. They thought Christ would come and rapture them to heaven and they'd be out of here. And nothing happened like they expected. Total bitter belly experience in Revelation 10:10, and also called the Great Disappointment on Google. If you Google Great Disappointment, it's about the Millerites and their mistakes. But Google won't tell you the truth about what it is. And that is simply that pioneers, and 99% of Adventists today believe what the pioneers said, that 1844 was the time of the end. It said so in Daniel 8:17, just 3 verses after the 2300 days, years really, from the decree to restore Jerusalem in 457 BC. If you count the 2300 days, evening, mornings, it comes to 1844. And they just got the events wrong, but the timing was right, I believe, because at that time Charles Darwin had his first copy of Origin of the Species, Evolution. Karl Marx had his stuff on Communist Manifesto. Charles Darwin was teaching dispensationalism and how we can be saved differently than with a rapture, by the way. And so, William Miller, Baptist preacher, had it wrong. And God wanted a movement to counter all these. And we could have been doing it better if we had not understood what pioneers thought, because after 2300 evening, mornings, days, which were years to 1844, 3 verses later, Gabriel tells Daniel the visions at the time of the end. And Adventists thought, oh, 1844 is the time of the end. That's why they thought Christ would come. But they never looked at a concordance, apparently, because 4 concordances, Englishman's, Bible Works, Strong's, and Young's, all say the vision at the time of the end is the Kazon, the conflict of the ram and goat. The ram has horns of Medes and Persians. Those are Iraq and Iran. We are at the time of the end now, and it's half fulfilled. Iraq is gone. Saddam is gone, I should say, as the king of Iraq, and pretty soon we're going to war against Iran. And from my study, it has to happen next year. Why? Because if you take that most best known prophecy in the Bible, 2300, it's the 77s of Daniel 9, it spans 10 jubilees. 490 years were 10 jubilees, because Jubilee was 50, but 50 was number 1 of the next sequence. They were 49 years apart, interlocking. And if you go not 10 jubilees, 490 years, but 50, to 1995, it comes out on the Day of Atonement that Pope John Paul was in the UN on the Day of Atonement. In Leviticus 25:10, that's the day to proclaim Jubilee and to give freedom to slaves or people in bondage, and to go to the Promised Land. That's what they did in Egypt, by the way. And the point is that that Jubilee event in our time could be counted, interestingly, from 1973, when Roe v. Wade came along and let them murder the babies. Egypt did that. They threw the babies in the river, and God paid them back in a Jubilee event. And 50 years later, for us, from Roe v. Wade, is 2023. Okay, wow. I've got 2 more timelines that intersect 2023. The Adventist Church was founded or formed in 1863. They organized, okay? And Joel 1, verse 3, 4, and 15, verse 15 says, the day of the Lord is at hand, but the context is verses 3 and 4. You tell your children, let them tell their children, them another generation. That's 4 generations. You, your children, their children, another generation. And what the cankerworm, palmer worm, locust, and caterpillar eat, there's nothing left. It says what the locust leaves, the caterpillar eats. And I believe a General Conference Corporation that's been pushing these mandates and happy for the money they're making, and their leadership down through the conferences are non-responsive. Try to talk to them. Not very possible. I think they're going to be out of here and dead a year and a half from now. Ellen White saw it. She described a terrible storm of persecution on the church, and after the storm, a calm, and Adventists arose like a flock of sheep, but there were no shepherds. Never seen again, she said the pastors were. Well, Christ said that his last night, I believe his last night on earth, was a microcosm of end-time events. He cited Zechariah 13:7. Smite the shepherd, the sheep will be scattered. Well, we see that clearly for him, and he was smitten, and his disciples scattered. Okay, but for us, it's Daniel 12:7. When in the time of the end, a time of trouble such as never was, it talks about, and in verse 7, there will be a scattering of the holy people. Well, that's the sheep, basically. And the shepherds won't be seen again, I bet you, because of what Ellen White said and because of what Christ said. In Matthew 24, verse 49, the evil servant believes that the Lord delays his coming, and he begins to smite, that's like the shepherds were smitten, his fellow servants. Fellow servants, fellow preachers, okay, are gone. Well, I think the Catholic Church understands pretty well who the preachers are, where they're at, where they live, and in the time of sudden calamity with martial law everywhere, I believe it will be over for this General Conference Church, which has done the bad stuff. Okay, and I just think they need to. Ellen White said so as much in Volume 5 of the Testimonies, page 211. She said, "Here we see the church, the Lord's house, was the first to feel the stroke of the wrath of God. The ancient men, those whom God had given great light, had betrayed their trust. They'd taken the position that the Lord will not do good, neither will he do evil, and peace and safety is the order of the day. They will not speak." She says, "These dumb dogs that would not bark are the ones who feel the just vengeance of an offended God." That's strong language from Ellen White, and I'm quoting the prophet, but I believe that big, heavy stuff is coming if we don't open up, tell the truth, and live the truth, and get out of the cities. We want our churches in the cities and so on. It's time to say, and also I would just say this, time for Ted Wilson in this coming General Conference to fold, say, sorry, we've done it wrong. Ellen White did not want a General Conference president over the whole church. She saw men in South America who could speak that language and understand their culture, making their decisions. They didn't need a visit to be told what to do, or in Africa or Asia or somewhere else. And so I think Ted Wilson should resign and say the time is short, let us live the truth as best we can, and give freedom in the church to talk about things that we don't talk about. What am I talking about? Come to the next, I'm almost 22 minutes long, and I have to quit at 25 on this one. Come to the next segment about the good news for this is the wedding parables. And in the wedding parable of Luke 12:36, it's 12 verse 44, he will make us ruler over all that he has, if we are so doing the things that he said. And right now the church is clueless. But the wedding is how we marry the bridegroom, and it includes truths. We need a covenant, and the covenant involves truths. Let me give you an example. Specifically, Matthew 17 verse 11 says that Elijah is going to come and restore all things. Well, what are the things that Elijah restores? In Malachi 4 and 5, remember the law of Moses with the statutes and judgments. Behold, I send you Elijah. Well, those statutes and judgments have a sevenfold emphasis in Ezekiel 20, with statutes, judgments, Sabbath, statutes, judgments, Sabbath, statutes, judgments, Sabbath, linked to Sabbaths. Well, Sabbaths with an S, plural, annual feast days, 7 of them, and covenants were linked to sevens. Okay, so the statutes and judgments that are said 7 times, and the 7 annual holy convocations of Ezekiel 20 mark the true people, but they don't keep today. The church has nothing to say good about the feast days, Passover, and so on. But that's when God's going to do it. It was in Egypt when God executed judgment on Egypt and took his people to a covenant. And the wedding parables have Passover imagery. We'll talk about it next time. I would like you to go to my website and get my books. You'll be in a better position for $10 donation and $5 for postage and handling. You can get an excellent book, Health, Happiness, Destiny, and a DVD that by itself on Amazon was $9.79 or something like that. The DVD shows how to reverse most diseases, including this current epidemic that we're having. Can be 73% less severity on a plant-based diet. Now, why don't we do the best we can with natural immunity instead of taking some you-know-what? Okay, bad idea for the church to be promoting, pushing that, and then not allowing freedom of conscience or defending freedom of conscience, but just going along with the government, which is typified as a beast in Revelation and Daniel. God, that's how God revealed governments as fierce beasts of prey, and we are siding with them to do the mandates. People need their jobs to a livelihood, but no mercy. You can say, well, it's my conscience. I can't use that. They won't even tell me what's in it. They won't tell me the bad side effects, etc. I can tell you what it is. I've researched it, but bad news. And a Journal of the American College of Cardiology said, we conclude that the mRNA does many bad things. I can send it to you. I'm out of time. God bless you. Thank you very much for